Are you terrified of the very people sworn to heal you? Welcome, dear viewers, to a chilling tale that unfolds in the heart of Texas. A story that will grip your heart and test your trust in the very people sworn to heal. Today, we delve into the dark and twisted saga of a man known infamously as Dr. Satan. In the 1980s, in the seemingly peaceful town of Edinburgh, Dr. Michael Swango walked the halls of the local hospital, a man of charm and intelligence, adored by his patients and respected by his peers. The bright fluorescent lights illuminated his crisp white coat, and his confident stride betrayed no hint of the horrors that lurked behind his warm smile. To the unsuspecting eye, he was the epitome of a devoted physician, one who listened with care, offered compassionate words, and performed his duties with an air of professionalism that put patients at ease. But behind that facade lay a chilling secret, one that would turn a place of healing into a den of horrors. As a medical student, Swango had displayed exceptional promise. He graduated with honors, his intelligence and charisma earning him respect among his peers and admiration from his professors. Yet there was a darkness in him, an insatiable appetite for control and a heart devoid of empathy. Slowly, he began to weave a web of manipulation, drawing people into his life while hiding his true nature. His charm became a double-edged sword, a tool that would later help him mask the monster he truly was. The hospital staff regarded him as a prodigy, but whispers of unease began to creep in. Patients who entered his care started to suffer from mysterious ailments. Some faced inexplicable complications, while others never walked out again. As the death toll climbed, a shroud of suspicion settled over the hospital like an ominous fog. Doctors exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, murmuring, "What is happening here?" But no one could have imagined the sinister truth lurking behind the good doctor's facade. Each new patient became a pawn in Dr. Swango's twisted game. His gaze turned icy when he was alone with them, his demeanor shifting from warm to cold as he reveled in the power he wielded. There were accounts of patients developing sudden cardiac arrests or experiencing severe reactions to medications administered under his watchful eye. Those who survived often reported feeling a chill in the room, an unshakable dread that their doctor held their fate in his hands. As investigators dug deeper into the swirling abyss of death and deceit, they uncovered a horrifying pattern. Dr. Swango had a history of suspicious patient deaths at previous hospitals. Colleagues described him as a phantom, a man whose presence seemed to bring death in its wake. Yet, despite the ominous trail of bodies, he slipped through the cracks of the medical system, leaving a wake of grief-stricken families behind. His past revealed a chilling consistency. At one hospital, patients experienced a string of inexplicable deaths during his shifts, yet complaints were brushed aside. The board, reluctant to confront the possibility of chose to ignore the unsettling coincidences, allowing Dr. Swango to continue his practice. In 1997, after years of chronic justice, the walls finally Swango, and the ensuing trial captivated the nation. It became a spectacle of pain and heartache as families recounted their devastating losses, sharing their stories of trust shattered and lives taken too soon. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric, crackling with tension and sorrow. Families of the victims filled the seats, their eyes filled with tears and rage. One by one, they stood before the jury, recounting the moments when they lost their loved ones to a man they believed would heal them. Each testimony was a dagger to the heart, cutting through the silence with raw emotion, revealing a tapestry of despair and betrayal. The prosecution painted a gruesome picture of a man who thrived on control and chaos. As witnesses shared their heartbreaking accounts, the jury could only sit in stunned silence, grappling with the magnitude of the horror that had unfolded within the hospital's walls. The prosecution argued that Swango had a motive, a twisted sense of power that came from wielding life and death in his hands. Among the families, Mary's story stood out, a loving mother whose health had begun to decline under Dr. Swango's care. Her family noticed something strange during her treatment. The doctor seemed to take an unusually keen interest in her condition. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Mary's health deteriorated rapidly, leaving her in a state of despair, battling an unseen enemy, the very person who was meant to heal her. Tom, her husband, took the stand, tears streaming down his face as he recounted the painful memories of watching his wife suffer. He painted a vivid picture of helplessness, describing how Mary had trusted Dr. Swango, believing he would cure her ailments. "We thought we were in good hands," he said, his voice trembling with grief. "We had no idea we were dealing with a monster." His words reverberated through the courtroom, each syllable heavy with anguish. As the evidence mounted against Dr. Swango, the jury listened intently, knowing that the lives of so many depended on their decision. They were faced with a reality that few could fathom. A man trained to heal had become a harbinger of death. The stories unfolded like a horror movie, each one more gut-wrenching than the last, as families bore their souls before the court. Then came the testimony of Dr. David Brown, a former colleague who had witnessed Swango's unorthodox practices firsthand. Dr. Brown spoke of a particular incident that still haunted him. "I walked into a room one day and saw him administering a drug that I knew was not appropriate for the patient's condition," he recalled, his voice shaky. "It sent chills down my spine. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't act fast enough." His admission was a heavy burden, laden with regret, as he realized the part he played in enabling the monster he once called a colleague. The tension in the courtroom escalated with each new revelation. Family members exchanged pained glances, knowing that the memories of their loved ones were being dragged through the mud, reliving their tragedies for the sake of justice. The atmosphere became suffocating, a palpable mix of grief, rage, and the desperate need for closure. As the trial reached its climax, the jury faced an impossible task: to reconcile the image of the beloved doctor with the horrific acts he had committed. The nation watched, holding its breath, waiting for justice to be served. Would they find him guilty of the unspeakable acts he had committed? Or would he walk free, a shadow looming over the lives he had destroyed? The courtroom grew silent, a tension hanging in the air as the jury deliberated. Outside, news reporters anxiously awaited the verdict. The weight of the moment felt across the country. Families huddled together, their faces etched with hope and fear, praying for justice, yet bracing for the possibility of despair. On that fateful day, the jury returned with their verdict. The courtroom was hushed, every breath held as they pronounced Dr. Swango guilty of multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the room, mingling with cries of anguish. Justice had finally been served, but at what cost? Families whose lives had been shattered by his actions wept tears of joy and sorrow, grateful for the verdict yet mourning the lives that could never be reclaimed. They had fought for justice, and though it could never erase their pain, it offered a glimmer of hope that others might be spared the same fate. As the gavel struck, sealing Swango's fate, the courtroom erupted in a mix of cheers and sobs. Justice, though bittersweet, had prevailed. Dr. Swango was sentenced to life in prison, a fitting end for a man who had wielded his medical knowledge as a weapon, preying on the vulnerable and unsuspecting. But the story didn't end there. The fallout from his actions would continue to reverberate throughout the medical community, raising questions about accountability and the systems that had allowed him to flourish for so long. Medical boards implemented stricter regulations, aiming to ensure that no doctor could slip through the cracks as Swango had. Dr. Satan serves as a haunting reminder of the fragility of trust, a trust we place in those who are meant to heal us. His story challenges us to question, how well do we know those we rely on? As we close this chapter, we invite you to reflect on the complexities of human nature and the darkness that can hide behind a facade of compassion. This chilling tale prompts us to remember that not all who wear the white coat are protectors. Some may harbor the darkest intentions. Let it serve as a wake-up call for vigilance, a reminder that the quest for healing can sometimes lead us down the darkest of paths. If you found this tale gripping, if it stirred something deep within you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement keeps these stories alive. Join us next time as we explore more dark and fascinating tales from history. Until then, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop questioning.